Chat, I'm having such a shit time with this, honestly. I've just disconnected, didn't I? Does it now say I've only been streaming for 20 seconds or whatever? This fucking sucks. This fucking sucks. Oh my god. And it's like Streamlabs has made changes to how the stream works without asking me, and I think that's what's contributing to it now like running like complete shit. So the reason I'm late today is because Streamlabs changed features without asking me, and the reason that the stream is cutting out as well, I'm pretty sure, is because Streamlabs has changed features without asking me. This just really sucks, like really properly, like the arrogance of everyone in like the tech sector at every level, where they're just like, we're going to push through this thing. We are sure it's really good. You are going to like it. You cut out around the RRO form bit. Okay, sorry, yes, that's actually very important, so let me explain. A rent repayment order is a process where you can get money back from your landlord in the UK if they have, you should go research this, broken certain rules. One of them is licensing. You have a cut and dry case. It's really good news that the basis of your one is licensing, because if you're because of the complaints you could give, the fact that you were living in an unlicensed HMO and they didn't register it with the council, that's just black and white. You don't have to like argue that part of it, right? And so you can apply to have the entire year's rent back from, or rather, the year up to the date that you moved out. Hey Zelda, thank you so much for the £20 donation with the message consolation for your tech challenges. I really appreciate that. Twitch has also been having stability issues for a few months now. That's really irritating. Okay, so you should also check out a group called Justice for Tenants. I spoke to one of the leads, Matt Conwell. He's really, really good. I spoke to him obviously because we're trying to file 200 of the fucking things. But the group Justice for Tenants can take on your case to do it, but they would take a third of your winnings at the end of it. So it's up to you. You can get free advice, and you can get free advice from them as well. But if you want to get like totally taken through the process, they'll take 30% of your stuff at the end. But here's the process if you want to know about it. You need to make an application. That's the RRO1 form. In there, you have to name the landlord who would be liable. It's okay for you to list multiple names as long as one of them is the correct landlord. One of the only ways you can fuck up and get nothing in an RRO with a licensing thing is if you don't name the person who was like the legal body or whatever. So you need to make sure that you name as many applicable company names or whatever as possible, as well as the person. Say how much you are trying to claim back, say the reason for it, and then you send that off, and then they look over the application, and they get back to you and they say, yep, this is a valid application, and then they ask you to pay a fee for your application and also submit evidence. At that point, you add on any other charges against them that you'd like to include. We had it through an agency, didn't know the landlord's name. Definitely worth you speaking to Justice for Tenants then, because someone from Justice for Tenants can probably advise you about who the immediate landlord and superior landlord, those are the legal terminology, who they are, and then help you figure out the best way to apply your rent repayment order. This, by the way, what I'm demonstrating here, this stuff I've learned about, this is because I've learned to do this for like 100 tenants. We're getting like everyone on the estate to do this because it's part of our strategy of, like, as we're calling it, phase 2 of the organizing, which is all about punishing the landlord for what they've done. I need to look in my properties of my camera, and That's a bit nicer, isn't it? That's a bit of a warmer tone. So yes, there you go, Nathaniel. You've now got your advice. Feel free to @ me on whatever social media if you have further questions, but I think I've sent you in the right direction. Okay, I think we should press on with the stream proper now. And what was I saying? I'll just wrap up this section about the organizing and how it's going. The mood is a bit weird. People are waiting to find out if there are applications to the court for a possession order on their homes, if they've got an eviction notice. People are waiting to hear back from the rent tribunal. And the council's response has been very, very, very frustrating. Like the Southwark Council keeps on trying to get people to make homelessness applications because it's basically the only way that the system of the council knows how to process this situation. And so that means the council keeps arguing for people to either accept a shit deal from the current landlord or move out and into a worse place than they are currently in, that they're not used to. In some cases, like outside of London or whatever. It really sucks. And then, like, one of the only avenues the council has to offer to, like, keep people in their homes is we accept the rent increase and then we'll pay the difference for an indefinite amount of time, but definitely a finite amount of time, like not an infinite amount of time, just an uncertain short amount into the future. And it's just like, no, that's gonna run out, and then that person's just gonna be fucked. Like, that's not an okay solution. So that's really frustrating. Yeah, I think the mood is just a bit low. People are feeling a bit shit about things, and it's also August, and so it's the time when most people are traveling if they are away over the summer. Bit of a weird mood at the moment, and I think the heat is also impacting people a lot. I think that being in extreme heat is, like fucking people up quite a bit. That said, perfect segue into the topic of today, which is the fact that the country has been on fire. And we're going to talk about it next. If you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer or donate directly using command TIP, as several people have done already. I really appreciate that. I have not been able to stream lots recently because of all the organizing. I'm trying to be back on regular streaming now. I'm also trying to get through the work that I've been trying to do that I've been putting off. So I have videos coming out soon. If you're not already subscribed to my Patreon, patreon.com/SophieFromMars is a great time to be, because there's about to be like 3 new videos pretty soon. But I have missed a lot of streaming and delayed putting out videos for a little while because of all the shit going on. So please do help me out if you can. Please do subscribe, cheer, donate directly using command TIP. There are about 30 people watching right now. We're aiming for £150 total on the stream today. That means if everybody gave £5, then we would get to the goal instantaneously. And we're also already at like 60. So if everyone watching gave only £30, we would make up the difference to the goal right away. Okay, so I'm going to wait for a loud motorbike to pass by my window, and then go look at this. Okay, let me just readjust this a little bit. Okay, so we've got one short piece from the New Statesman to set the tone. We've got a few longer pieces to look at later on. And then, wait a second, that's not the same one again, is it? No, sorry. And then, if we get through all of those, we'll have a little bit at Abdul El Sayed being discussed in The Atlantic. And you know what? If we fly through all of it, actually, and don't get any more stream cutouts, we might look at something from Ezra Klein, because of the new videos that I have coming out soon. The biggest project is What is Happening to Ezra Klein, a video I've been working on for now nearly a year, so I'm very, very, very excited to be nearly done with it. And I've been saying since that interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates happened, which is kind of the main focus of what's happening to Ezra Klein. The main sort of point I'm getting at in that I've also been saying on the stream, is maybe Ezra Klein is kind of waking up to some shit. Maybe. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Fingers crossed. And he's put out some really interesting stuff in the last couple of weeks. And if we get through all the articles, then we might watch a little bit of that, and I'll show you what I'm on about. I'm going to be fiddling with this, by the way, throughout the stream. And if anyone's wondering what I'm fiddling with, it's actually a Green Party pin, because I just joined the Green Party this week. And I might be writing a video about the Green Party soon, because I have some strong critiques of where they're currently at, and I think it's not very good for us all in society that the internet tends to make any praise must be like, this thing is infallible and perfect, and any critique must be like, this thing sucks, I hope it dies and catches on fire. It's important to critique the things that you like and hope for improvement, and not just want to like destroy the things that you don't like and throw them away and see no flaws in the things that you like. So I have some thoughts about the Green Party. Yeah. Okay, that's the plan for the stream. We're going to look at some New Statesman. If we get through the New Statesman, we're going to look at some Atlantic. If we get through the Atlantic, we're going to look at Ezra Klein. Unless someone does a massive dono and requests that we immediately watch Ezra Klein. If any Ezra heads bust into the dono box. Oh, speaking of, Willada says, Willada, thank you so much for the £20 donation. Really appreciate that. Your chance to hold the leftist note. Short question for a short answer. Does organising get harder the lower the socioeconomic class of the group you are helping? Wee! No. You wanted a short answer? I'm going to give a slightly longer answer than that. No, it doesn't straightforwardly get harder the poorer people are. In some regards, I would argue more aspects than not, it gets easier to organize people who are poorer. Because... So, for example, one part of the legal struggle that is going on in the estate here, right, is just doing a bunch of research and then helping people get through forms. People who are poorer tend to have had less education and tend to have had less experiences that make them feel like they are welcome participants when engaging with the British legal system. I have two university educated parents, and so I am someone who has been raised with an expectation that if I have to encounter a court, I'm probably just defending myself or seeking justice rather than I'm in trouble, I've done something wrong, I'm going to go to prison, right? Which is how a lot of the poorest people in society automatically feel if they interact with a court, right? And it's not like I've been particularly rich at any point in my life. The height of my YouTube career so far, I was paying off a massive tax burden, and so I was just about comfortable. My dad was diagnosed with brain cancer when I was less than a year old and slowly died over the first 25 years of my life. My family had a lot of sort of culturally middle class things going on, and financially uh, you know. But I nonetheless have received the sort of cultural priming to feel ready to help people with that kind of stuff, and so it's really easy to help people in that regard, right? Like, so one thing that we've done in the organizing is produce like template sheets that people can just go through and fill out this form, being like, select the stuff that applies to you and just copy paste it in, basically. The I'm gonna bring it back around to your answer, and then I'm gonna try and tie it up because you said you did want a short answer. Richer people feel like they can, and they're correct about this, right? They accurately feel like they can just opt out of a collective struggle and just do their own thing. Hire a lawyer, move, fuck off, basically, right? Just pay for theirs, and they've got theirs, and fuck everybody else. That's an incredibly common attitude among people who are richer, and I'm not gonna like shit talk any neighbors here, but they're, you know what? Here, I'll say this. There are 4 types of house in this estate. There are single bed flats, there are 2-bed flats, there are 2-floor duplexes, and there are houses. And you could subdivide a couple of those into slightly more categories, but this place, the place I've been in for a decade, is one of the 2-floor duplexes. So it's quite a nice, quite big for an apartment, but it's an apartment, definitely. It's not like, rather than a house per se. And there is a really super observable and just clear cut distribution between people who are in 1-bed, 2-bed, duplex, and house. 1-bed, 2-bed, and duplex apartments and houses, in terms of people who will just opt out and just peace out, and they're done, and they've hired a lawyer and they're doing their own thing, and they don't consider it important to themselves or anyone else that they are involved with the collective struggle. The number of individualists whose response is somewhere between like sort of ironically detached skepticism towards people working together to just moving out because they just can, they've bought a house and they've fucked off. It's way more the people who are in houses who've done that, like way more. And after that, it's the people in the duplexes like I'm in, and then after that, it's the 2-bed flats, and then after that, it's the 1-bed flats, right? Just like very straightforward data set in terms of you can see, right? And so like people think about like hard to organize, and they think about things like interpersonal conflict. They think about things like bigotry, right? They think about those things as being issues that stop people from being able to organize in a community and hold the community back. I'm telling you right now, middle-class liberalism is the single biggest enemy to organizing working class communities. The single biggest. Like, the single biggest enemy is middle-class liberalism and aspiring middle-class liberalism. People thinking of themselves in an incredibly individualistic way and seeking to just get theirs and piss off, basically, is the single biggest enemy of organizing, especially in the imperial core, where people are generally richer. That's my answer to your question. I guess I should actually make this available to people. If you donate with a question like that, especially an organizing question, I'm very happy to drop what's going on the stream and refocus on that, because, you know, I love talking about organizing, and I love getting that information out there to people. So yeah, in some regards, it is easier to organize with some people who are like middle-class liberals because they'll share a value set with you in some cases. But in other cases, it's actively much, much harder. Yeah. All right, we're getting into it. We're going to start with a short one first from the New Statesman. The New Statesman, if anyone here is new to the New Statesman, is a center-right magazine that is like the Labour right-wing, like the Blue Labour paper of record, essentially. And it was originally fairly left-wing. It sort of followed the arc of Labour, essentially, over the last 100 years or so. And Morrigan says, I didn't put my question in the dono, but you did donate, so if you have a question, that's okay. Willada says, thanks for the answer. Someday I might do something helpful for others when I figure out how before my spoons are spent. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I haven't talked about this much on the stream, but those of you who are aware that I took a hiatus after a big interpersonal crisis where I caused some harm in interpersonal relationships, and then a harassment campaign was started against me that took on its own took on its own life and evolved into this horrible, like, transmisogynistic caricature that saw me sort of unpersoned and ostracized by loads of people for a couple of years. There are plenty of people who watch who are sort of generally aware of that stuff, and I don't talk about it loads on here. But I know I haven't really talked about how it's been quite disabling. I used to have loads more energy. I used to be just like a much more active person in a bunch of ways, and just sort of start the day with a lot of energy. And it's been, yeah, I mean, trauma is disabling, right? And being suddenly iced out by almost everyone you know, based on things that you can't talk to them about because they won't talk to you, is unbelievably traumatic. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I want to point out, like, people lying about me, but I also think in terms of the trauma load, I will say from an abolitionist perspective, it doesn't massively matter if people are lying about you, because, like, the degree of trauma of that stuff happening will kind of be the same either way, I think. I think that's worth us thinking about in terms of compassion for people who have done stuff wrong. Which, to be clear, I've done some things wrong. I'm also not going to talk about those things, but, like, more for like people's privacy and Twitch terms of service than anything else. But, like, you know, we need, as abolitionists, to be comfortable with the idea that people do things wrong, right? Like, that's just actually quite an essential thing. Morrigan has a question. Sorry, to conclude that thought, I am, like, just a lot more fatigued, I guess, regularly than I have ever been previously in my life, and I just know that what's happened the last couple of years is a huge part of it. Oh, pardon me, I'm so sorry, I drank my coffee too fast. Morrigan says, the world is not ending. Would you say capitalism cannot stop climate change, or that the current system of capitalist order is fundamentally incompatible with capitalism? Capitalism cannot stop climate change is a true statement. Just fundamentally, no matter what magical doohickey they invent, capitalism cannot stop climate change. The hideous ravaging of the planet for profit cannot be stopped without a Morgan, I'm going to need you to completely rephrase the question, because your asterisk, I don't know where to apply it within the question. But the capitalism can't stop climate change, I'm going to start with that thing on its own is true. Just like that's just a true statement. So when it's that, or I'm just going to say, firstly, that thing's true. However, there's more. So the core thesis of the world is not ending is that capitalism can't stop climate change, but climate change can stop capitalism. We are already seeing the degree to which the climate is collapsing because of climate change, which is because of capitalism, is impeding capitalism. There are many vectors through which this is true. If you look at the like economic shrinkage and corresponding decline in rate of pollution that happened during the pandemic, right? That's because everyone was staying inside because the government had to act to mandate things, which is generally not the way that neoliberalism likes things to be done, except when it's mandating that you can't protest or mandating that you can't form a union. It doesn't like socialist policy, right? And while I don't believe that COVID-19 had that much to do with climate change per se, didn't come from climate change per se, I do know for a fact and can say categorically that climate change will drive future pandemics, right? So that's just one vector through which capitalism's shit is going to get clapped by climate change, and that's literally just one avenue through which productivity in the economy gets fucked over, because would you say capitalism cannot stop climate change, or that the current system of capitalist order is fundamentally incompatible with combating climate change, is what I meant to type. Would you say capitalism cannot stop climate change, or the current system of capitalist order is fundamentally incompatible with combating climate change, is what I meant to type. Capitalism, the system, requires infinite growth. There are other economic systems that include markets, that include trade, that include even quite a lot of trade, and even include capitalist elements that are regulated by a very powerful state, which are not capitalism per se. Like the society is not defined by capitalism. I'm not saying there is no world where any capitalism exists on the earth and we survive. But for example, if every country in the world took on socialism with Chinese characteristics tomorrow, we would start to see the planet heal fairly quickly, actually, because a UN made up of 200 Chinas would be capable of collectively taking the decision to stop using fossil fuels and build out massive green infrastructure, and also crucially work together to build out massive green infrastructure. So, and that's on the sort of far more capitalist end of possible modes of production that a country could have, right? China has plenty of capitalism. It just exists, as it were, almost within a regulatory sandbox, right? China's capitalism is an engine that is part of a greater and much bigger, really, system. And in the West, capital is just completely dominant. Like the other systems are all submissive to capital. Oki Deer says, capitalism eating itself is fun, but this death rattle is going on way too long for me. There could have been a lot more work being done to prepare to change over to something more sustainable. Do the stuff then. Do. So do. Sorry, I know that's flippant. I just like, do stuff is the answer. If it's going too slow, then we all have to do stuff. Core thesis of the world is not ending is that climate change will destroy capitalism, and before the point where capitalism is rendered impossible by climate change, a whole bunch of people will realize that is coming and they will jump ship. the sooner that happens, the better state the planet will be in. And ultimately, where I leave my prediction in The World Is Not Ending is that we may experience what I've termed salvage communism. After Anna Lowenhaupt Singh's, from the Mushroom at the End of the World, term salvage capitalism, where she describes profit being extracted out of disaster conditions that create new resources, I'm saying, well, we can have a salvage communism instead, right? Where people are pushed to a point of having to have centralized economies and planned economies and centralized state control for the things that they are doing, or federated control in an anarchist sort of way, because of a scarcity of resources and a social collapse and various crises that they are being confronted with. So yeah, that's. I think I've answered those questions quite well. There you go. I find the theoretical and philosophical implications of your piece fascinating. Thank you, Morrigan. I guess what I'm driving at is that could a theoretical social democratic world order stop climate change using a system that is separated from capitalism? I don't really have a preference. My preference is improving material conditions on the planet. I will reiterate, I believe that socialism with Chinese characteristics is just about the most capitalist I think a mode of production could be for the whole world to adopt in order to get out the other side of this stuff. I think that a social democracy is likely to be... what Westerners now in 2026 would call a social democracy, which is not like what people in, for example, 1926 would call a social democracy, is far too weak. We need something that's a lot more socialist than that. Okay. Cool. Yes. If anyone wants to talk more about first time chatter, Caveman for Real says "Wah," which is just about one of the worst first chat messages you could possibly send, right? Like, no one knows what you're responding to. Just walking into a room and going, "Huh?" really loud to everyone there. So basically, you want to give the government more control. Okay. Preschool let out early. Anyway, right, liberal slop stream. Let's do it. Okay. Heat waves make a majority of Brits more fearful for the future. Even a third of Reform voters say recent temperatures make them anxious about climate change. This is what I'm saying, right? There is a complete immediacy to the stuff that's happening right now. And, buddy, if you talk like that, do you think you're winning any friends? Or do you think everyone here thinks you're a huge loser? Like genuinely, like, I'm not going to waste time on this, man, but, like, if you come in here where everyone basically feels the same way about this stuff and they've come here to watch me and hear my excellent opinions, right? They're not... no one here is thinking, like, wow, what a cool guy. He said the Arsler. Ooh, damn. You know? They're thinking, wow, what a loser who's wasting his life. All right. So this is what I'm saying. The immediacy of climate change, even among Reform voters, right? It's incredibly... I genuinely think we're going to see Reform's climate denial completely fall apart in the next little while because of how bad these heat waves have been, especially when you consider that the demographic of people who are most affected by extreme heat, and the demographic of people who are most affected by reform social media misinformation, boomers, the elderly, right? There's a massive overlap. Artist Synth, welcome to the stream. Lovely to have you here. All right, let's read this. It's only a short one. The Scorcher is no more. Gone is the jolly tabloid celebration of hot sunny days, Brits with their kit off, silly season stories about feral seagulls. Instead, our summer months bring news of locals displaced and tourists fleeing wildfires on the continent, UK fire waves, and gasping hot days every few weeks. The climate conversation, beyond energy security, has slipped down every political party's list of priorities in recent years. This is as voters too worry far more about money, immigration, and healthcare than they do about the planet. It feels like a long time ago. It feels like a long time ago. I'll give Anush Chakelian a free pass on this one because extreme heat does cause brain fog. So, you know, just a little typo is not that big a deal. But any publication that's trying to bill itself as like big tough smart guy making tough decisions about politics, having little typos always tickles me. Cooking Calamity, welcome to the stream. Lovely to have you here. Vordrella says, not aimed at anyone here. I'm just so disappointed that a lot of people I see learning about communism are veering into elitist narrative, thinking about historical communism as a sort of wonderland, and now insist modern China is an enemy of true communism. I think it's a necessary progression. I used to hate Deng Xiaoping, and I have had to begrudgingly admit over time that he was just right, and it just worked, and Dengism is just working quite well. Yeah. Beck says, couldn't make the tough decisions about how many times to press the A key. That's quite good. We haven't got through one article yet. Let's do it. Come on, chat. Come on. It's literally me holding it up. Come on. Come on, Sophie. It feels like a long time ago the environment was one of the top 3 voter concerns when the Global Climate Summit COP26 was held in Glasgow in 2021 and during severe floods back in 2019. Shirara, thank you so much for donating £21.87 with the message, finally back to being here live. Look at me make a fun number. And the number is $99.99. That is actually really fun. Thank you. Million Peaches says Sino-Soviet split seems to have a clear victor. I mean, in that one of them collapsed, yes, but also like there are strong things to say for both of them. I am, however, very suspicious of people who will say that the USSR was like real communism and China isn't, because it always gets racist really fast, just like really fast. But the heat is always front of mind. It affects our health, sleep, and work, our childcare arrangements and leisure plans. This has a political impact. As the 4th heatwave this summer grips Britain, the majority of voters say they feel more fearful for the future because of the temperatures they've experienced this year. Yeah, so she's written this after the 4th. We're expecting at least 6. Like at least 6 discrete waves of the temperature going massively up. More than 50% of all Brits say they are more fearful for what's to come in the future, and more than 48% explicitly feel more anxious about climate change, according to polling by Survation for Climate Outreach and Round Our Way. Even as the Conservative Party denounces its own policy of net zero targets and Reform UK flirts with denialist stances on climate change, their supporters are worried. Tory and reform-leaning voters are more likely to agree than disagree that the recent heat has made them more fearful for the future. 57% of Labour voters, 53% of Conservative voters, and 45% of Reform voters say that heat waves make them more fearful for the future, and 58% of Labour voters, 48% of Conservatives, and 33% of Reform voters say they make them feel more anxious about climate change. As extreme heat across the UK and familiar hot holiday destinations for Brits in Europe spark unprecedented wildfires, voters have yet to hear the new Prime Minister Andy Burnham's take on tackling the climate crisis. Hints have been made that he will take a different stance on North Sea oil and gas from the previous administration and allowing drilling at sites that have already been licensed. But with the Green Party putting less emphasis on its environmental agenda, the Lib Dems focusing on river pollution and other concerns about the natural environment, there is a political risk in failing to address the fears of Britain's melting electorate. Okay, chat. What do we think about that article? Pretty wacky, I'd say. A pretty wacky time. I just went. If you saw that, I just went and checked the date that this article was published, because Zach Polanski did a press conference, a live press conference. Okay, it was 2 days ago, so it was about a week after that article came out. But Zach Polanski did an hour-long press conference with an environmentalist campaigner, a doctor, a firefighter, and an army engineer about the urgent need for better climate relief in response to the extreme heat. So I will just say, Anoush Chakilian, you look like a fucking idiot right now. You look so stupid right now. Like, Princess Back Knight 666 says, I'm sorry, that feels like a false statement about the Greens at the end there. I'm glad you said that. Would anyone in the class like to tell me how the false statement is constructed? I will read it back to you. I was going to point it out if nobody said so. I'm glad that you've picked up on it. With the Green Party putting less emphasis on its environmental agenda, so would anyone like to tell me what they mean by that and how they've manufactured that very strange statement about the Greens? Article feels like a word count article. It's a pretty mediocre take. It's like pretty like, yeah, like getting some content out there. So one thing they said in the press conference, by the way, that Zach Polanski did, was Britain has 0 firefighting planes. Just no infrastructure. Sorry, one sec. Just like absolutely no infrastructure for dealing with this stuff appropriately. Okay, no one else has, but Beck is having a stab at how the false statement has been constructed. Star pupil that she is. It's constructed to paint the Greens' increased emphasis on tying their green agenda to the economic policies that would further it, read socialism, as somehow being decreased emphasis on environmentalism. Ding, 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 ding. Someone's getting a gold star for being top of the class. Exactly spot on. Yes. The Greens' agenda has proportionally fewer policies that are explicitly about the climate crisis now than it used to when it was a single issue party. They literally have more policies now. Lil Toasty X, welcome to the stream. Lovely to have you here. They've become a multi-issue party with an entire policy platform, right? Which describes eco-socialism in order to save the fucking country and by extension the planet from climate collapse. And because that doesn't entirely read as, and we'll do this to save the environment, and we'll do this to save the environment, and we'll give a tree a little kiss, and we'll put an otter over here. Like, because it's not like that, it is proportionally fewer policies about the environment directly. But this is the kind of fascinating moment for the woke Greens, right? The fossil fuel industry has given money to anti-trans political campaigning groups. The fossil fuel industry has given money to anti-abortion campaigning groups, right? The fossil fuel industry has propped up the campaigns of Christian nationalist, effectively like counter-revolutionaries, right, who are driving change in the Anglosphere, in America, in the UK, in Europe, because the fossil fuel industry know who their allies are. They know which kind of world lets them get away with the shit they want to get away with, because the fossil fuel industry and Jeffrey Epstein have a remarkably similar set of interactions with the rest of the world. And so, eco-socialist progressive politics is actually a completely natural, perfect opposite platform to create against the people who are creating climate collapse, because they are defending their interests, defending their ability to make money off killing the entire planet, right, by funding a sort of intersectional fascism that is not just racist. It's also it's everything, right? It's anti-migrant, it's racist, it's homophobic, it's anti-woman, and you can see this like in records of donations. It's literally there is an actual paper trail showing the way that the fossil fuel industry ties together all of this evil bullshit. Anyway, about the article, I would like us all to ponder. Both were on the same island, totally a coincidence. Shirara says, reminds me of when people were mad that the Sunrise Movement was confronting politicians about supporting AIPAC, thus allegedly abandoning their climate roots, even though the US military is the world's biggest polluter. Yeah, absolutely, no, 100%. Yeah, it's the same shit. It's the same shit. Side note, in my Ezra Klein video, people are going to get mad at me for pointing out that Sarah McBride is a Zionist who's taken $45,000 from AIPAC, because some people just want to see Sarah McBride as the only trans woman in Congress and therefore, flawless, and and not like look at her politics at all. And I'm just gonna say that now ahead of time. Some people are going to be pissed off about that, and I'm just no. Also, war is like the worst thing for everyone on Earth, including the climate crisis. Yeah, 100%, 100%. Anyway, I'd like us to ponder for a minute on the kind of core topic of this article, which again, like, if we just want to do a quick, almost whistle stop tour of the liberal slop stream classics about this article. What's it trying to do? We are raising the issue that voters care more about climate change again. How is it perpetuating the spectacle, i.e. pushing back on socialism and reinforcing the idea that only the free market can ever rule anything, right? It's very simple. When it does polling about which voters believe in which thing, Greens are absent. When it talks about the positions of different parties, Greens are absent. And then right at the end, it just lies about the Greens. Right? It's just like don't look at the Greens. It's one of these things that, like, if you were paying attention when Trump came to power, you noticed that all the people saying, this guy is disgusting, he's misogynistic, he's racist, I can't believe he's so rude to people. He said, what about a talk show host? That's crazy. It almost was believable that those people were just so naive that the things they were saying were actually giving more power to Trump. But then you saw how they reacted to Bernie, which was carefully coordinated radio silence, not allowed to talk about Bernie ever. And that's when you know, like, that, if you were paying attention, that would be when you realized that the media knew exactly what they were doing in enabling Trump, because they knew exactly how to shut down a candidate they didn't want to have power. by not talking about them. It's the same with the Greens now. Mashionio, welcome to the stream. First time chatter, and the chat message reads, remember chat, this is one of the coolest summers of the rest of our lives. I will say, broadly, this is probably true. Like, we have not seen how hot it can get yet. But I think it's worth pushing back on the Greenpeace line there a little bit. The trends do, like, bounce around. The overall trend is upwards. This one could turn out to be the hottest one for the next 5 years, right? It could be that the next 4 summers are just a little bit cooler than this. I just want to say it is technically possible that that's the case, especially if positive change is made in response to this. But yes, this is unfortunately probably one of the coolest summers of the rest of our lives. Okay, we've done the first article. That one was a bit of a taster. I want to go over to The Guardian next and read an article called UK has no future if it fails to act on ecosystem collapse threatening national security. I'm going to hold off on that for a second because I want to discuss around this stuff a little bit more. That article we just read, I'm going to move the chat box on my vertical thing. I don't even want to have a vertical view. This is so annoying having to figure out where to put the stuff. Oh my god. Okay, I'm going to have the bar up above my head. I don't even know if anyone is watching on vertical mode even. I'm going to have the channel logo bottom right like I do on the horizontal mode. The chat over my titty. There we go. Okay, that's fine. Okay. I think it's worth us pondering what it means for voters in the voter base of every major party becoming really concerned about climate change, because it means we will probably see the production of reactionary climate change acknowledging points, right? Which is seemingly an oxymoron based on what I just said, right? Like the fossil fuel industry has been funding people with reactionary perspectives to create this very intersectional reactionary project, this oppressive fascist project. And so the idea that there is going to be like a climate, like non-climate denying reactionary position produced seems strange. First of all, let's point out that it's too late, we can't do anything, we're doomed, is still an anti-science denialist point of view that is fundamentally quite reactionary. Like telling people to do nothing when a revolution is needed is a reactionary position. Mashionio says, I'm in Canada and Carney has basically walked back all of our climate goals. That's because he's a sensible centrist. And he has to do what's realistic. Why are you being so unrealistic expecting people to not kill the planet? He's only doing what's pragmatic and realistic because he's a sensible centrist sausage. Sorry, I'll stop this bit. It's such a horrible bit. A reactionary climate accepting perspective. One such is, of course, we're doomed, there's nothing we can do. The doomer perspective. But another is what people have been describing as, and we've described in Red Planet before, as Fortress Europe. Fortress Europe is this idea, what we have here, what we have inside the Imperial Core, what we have inside our borders is so good. Someone, thank you so much for tipping £11 and 12 pence to get us to 111.11. If anyone else can think of any fun numbers. We've gone from 99.99 to 111.11. That's very fun. It would be cool to keep that streak going. But just generally, if you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer or donate directly using command tip. And if you have a Twitch account that's attached to a Prime account, you can give me a Prime sub without you paying any extra money, but I do get extra money, which is cool, right? Also, you can subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/SophieFromMars. I am going to have 3 new videos up there in the next few weeks. It's a great time to become a Sophie from Mars patron. If we're imagining a point of view that is a reactionary, climate-accepting point of view, Fortress Europe, the idea that we have this great quality of life here inside the Imperial Core, within our borders, they, as opposed to us, want to get in, we should keep them out. That perspective can be made into a very climate-focused perspective, right? Especially if more clean energy can be built, if more solar and wind can be built, right? We will be insulated from fossil fuel shocks. Therefore, our bills will be lower, which is another way our quality of life can be higher, right? We will be insulated from fossil fuel shortages, right? No blackouts. If we correct towards infrastructure that protects us against extreme heat, and I'm writing a bit about this at the moment, we could have passive cooling systems. Heat exchange pumps is one, alongside aircon. There are active cooling systems, but we could have passive cooling systems. Like I've said before, I'm working on this sunshade for the neighborhood to cool down the road, cool down the area. Trees help with this as well. Water features cool down an area massively. External, even something as simple as external blinds or external shutters on a window of a house cools it down enormously. I've sent something around to people I know showing what I've done recently on the house, but I've made something like external with cloth that has actually like I wish I could send the picture of it with an accompanying like sensation of how much cooler the house is, because genuinely I've cooled down my house enormously by just like creating an external blind thing. If we have a change in infrastructure that creates a variety of different cooling mechanisms that keeps us safe from extreme heat, right? That will be another way that we will be insulated against climate destruction. There are also some possibilities for localized geoengineering. I think this is a terrible idea for a bunch of reasons, and one of the strongest reasons this is a terrible idea is that it reinforces the fortress mindset for a richer nation. Because if you can do local geoengineering, right? So for example, in the last few years, they took a particular chemical out of boat fuel, and there was a termination shock in terms of the ocean temperatures, because the pollutants from shipping had been creating a reflective pollution in the ocean, which had been keeping it cooler, and so it got way hotter way faster, right? Therefore, we know that chemical could be used to keep ocean temperatures down. That's an example of a localized geoengineering. De-desertification is an example of localized geoengineering. You can do things to make soil good and reverse the process of desertification in a specific area. Machionio says, solar and wind is so important. That's why China is doing okay after the Hormuz Strait was being blocked. They have built a lot of solar and wind infrastructure. So it's complicated, and you are partially correct. China's willingness to do the long-term thinking and long-term security thing and also morally good thing and build renewable energy on massive scales has insulated them quite well. And they also had a fair amount of secret oil, which was like kind of not on the books, and their and so like the stockpile they had as well as the supply they had was bigger than people kind of officially knew, and they've actually had so much that they've been able to supply other countries as well during the shortage since the Iran war began. And that's obviously not great for the environment. It's good for the stability of countries that aren't dependent on American imperialism, but it's not good for the environment. B-Rat says de-desertification has some global effects too, though. It's one of the few actual ways of storing carbon we have. This is an interesting point. Anything that you do that affects the ecology of your country would have an effect overall. But I think that, yeah, I mean, if Britain has the money to one way or another like restore, even slightly restore, like habitats that are destroyed by a wildfire, and let's pick a country relatively nearby, Romania doesn't, then we could conceive of there being Romanian migrants to the UK whose land has been completely destroyed by climate change, and these people would be the ideal fodder for a Fortress Britain narrative against them. Okay, let's look at the next article, which is about. I really think, yeah, we should really get into some more of the facts around this shit with the UK, because I don't know if people are aware of this. The UK's food supply chain, dog shit. Just utter shit. A lot of the people who talk big on Brexit either have no idea or don't care because they have enough money that the UK is like essentially incapable of feeding itself. Yeah, the UK is like is really, yeah, not in a good situation when it comes to food to begin with. And now this shit's happening. Okay, before we dive in, I'm just going to say, if you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer or donate directly using command tip. And VOD viewers, you can support me in the link down below. And everyone can go to my Patreon if you want to support me monthly and also see my videos early when they're ready. Okay. And there's also, actually, I should have been promoting this. If you're considering checking out my Patreon, which is patreon.com/SophieFromMars, there is now a little snippet from my Ezra Klein video up on my Patreon for all patrons. So at any tier, you can see a little preview snippet of what I've edited, of one of the things I've edited so far for that project. Let's go into UK has no future if it fails to act on ecosystem collapse threatening national security. MPs demand publication of full report that outlines catastrophic consequences amid concerns for food scrutiny. Members of Parliament have demanded, and by the way, this is Big Tesco. Is this Big Tesco? Let me just check. Oh, it's actually not. Fucking hell. I'm so embarrassed now. The green crates are the same. That's what made me. That's what led to my error here. I think this might be Aldi. Open image in new tab. Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on then. This is a big Tesco adjacent big grocery store in the UK. So when we're all talking about big Tesco, this is the style of shop that that we're talking about. But this isn't actually big Tesco. This is probably Asda. Asda, a lot of Asda's branding is green. Morrison's, here it is. This is why I'm not recognizing the branding. There are no Morrison's near me. All right. Okay. Why is it shrunk? All right. MPs have demanded a full publication of an explosive report by the UK's spy leaders that found the collapse of ecosystems overseas would have catastrophic consequences for the UK's national security, warning the UK has no future if the findings are not urgently acted on. Despite growing concerns for the UK's food security, likely to be worsened by the third heatwave this summer currently afflicting the UK and swathes of the Northern Hemisphere, the government has refused to publish the full report, which has circulated among defence officials for more than a year. Cooking Calamity, thank you so much for the £7 donation message. I gotta go again. Have a good night, everyone. Good night, Cooking Calamity. Thank you for stopping by. The report paints a devastating picture of severe food shortages, price rises, migration, political destabilization, and possible war resulting from the collapse of ecosystems fueled by the human-induced climate crisis and overexploitation, as The Guardian has previously revealed. Food shortages could result within 5 years. I mean, this report says this, and that's all fine, but also climate activists have been saying this forever. Like, absolutely fucking forever. It's kind of wild to be like, yeah, the intelligence services have this secret report that's going around, and the MPs want it to be public. It's like, read some fucking Malm. Read some George Monbiot. Read some fucking Murray Bookchin, for that matter. Like, it's not... Go on the Anarchist Library. You know? Just go on the Anarchist Library. You'll read all of this shit. We've all been saying it since forever, you stupid dickheads. By the way, when I'm saying about the alignment of different political perspectives on climate change because it's becoming this completely inescapable reality, this is part of what I mean about salvage communism. There becomes a material need for us to behave in a different way. Behave in a different way and have a different mode of economic production because of the Marxists would call and some philosophers would call the facticity. Right, the facticity, the specific details of what's happening. The material conditions is another way you could say it. Kind of the facticity of climate change it demands different solutions, and the free market is not going to be one of them. It's just not going to be one of them. Okay. MPs on the Environmental Audit Committee who held a hearing on the report on Wednesday afternoon also warned the government was failing to join the dots between the national security threat posed by the climate crisis and the collapse of species and swinging cuts to the overseas aid and climate finance budgets. Mary Cray, perhaps, the Minister for the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, told MPs at the hearing that a redacted 14-page version of some findings published after repeated Freedom of Information requests in January could provide enough information. The Cabinet Office, also responsible for the cross-government report, refused to send a minister or official. Toby Perkins, the chair of the committee, said he was disappointed not to see the full version. It's a disappointing signal, and it would be a positive sign if we could cooperate on a response to the findings, he said. The minister clearly does appreciate the scale of this crisis, but I remain of the view that the government has more to do to grasp the urgency of the moment. Chris Hinchcliffe, the Labour MP and member of the committee, contrasted the £15 billion to be added to the defence budget with the lack of funding to protect critical ecosystems. The government can summon billions of pounds for new military hardware when the defence sector calls for it. We need an equally decisive mobilisation of investment to restore the natural world on which we rely for food, water and clean air. Without these essentials, our country has no future, he said. Every critical ecosystem across our planet is on a pathway to collapse with an irreversible loss of function, and this poses huge threats to our national security. This looming crisis demands urgent action, he added, citing findings in the unpublished report. We need recognition from every part of government about how important preventing global biodiversity collapse is for the future of our society. Adrian Ramsey, the Green Party MP, just pause on this for a second, everyone. That's somewhat important. But you won't see why yet. Adrian Ramsey, the Green Party MP, said, "If the government is serious about security, it makes no sense to be cutting the international development and climate finance budgets, which are crucial to tackling these fundamental threats. It's outrageous for the government to refuse to let MPs see the full report. How can we possibly scrutinise whether the government's response to these grave risks is adequate?" Very good quote there from Adrian Ramsey, the Green Party MP, wasn't it? That was a good one? Right. The report by the Joint Intelligence Committee and other government departments revealed by The Guardian last October shows that the UK will face catastrophic consequences from the collapse of key ecosystems in other countries. These include the Amazon rainforest, which scientists fear is reaching a tipping point triggered by deforestation and rising temperatures, which would turn the ecosystem from a huge absorber of carbon dioxide into a net source of carbon. Food shortages would be almost certain to result from the decline of ecosystems overseas, the report found, as would a big increase in global migration, with the potential to fuel unrest. Among the most alarming findings was that armed conflict, which includes nuclear war, was also a potential consequence. The report was due to be published at an event last October attended by King Charles in the Natural History Museum. However, at the last minute, the publication was pulled at the behest of Downing Street. Ministers at the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs and the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero also tried to have the report released at the COP30 summit in Brazil, but that was also prevented. Insiders said this was due to the former advisor to Keir Starmer, Morgan McSweeney. He's one of the most right-wing figures in the Labour Party in the last 20 years. The Guardian revealed in February that the UK's climate assistance to poor countries would be slashed, with a ring fence for nature spending scrapped and projects from the Congo to Latin America and Asia losing out. Cray told the hearing of the Environmental Audit Committee on Wednesday that the government was laser-focused on using the diminished finance available to protect nature. She pointed to £6.7 billion the government planned to spend on nature and climate, with an added aim of mobilising billions from the private sector. Now, a little edit here that was made after release. The Guardian says, this article was amended on the 9th of July, 2026. In an earlier version, Green MP Adrian Ramsey was misnamed as Adrian Barclay. So let's just, there go Adrian Barclay. Right. And we got some random LinkedIn. Some guy in Bristol. Random Facebook. Yep. So we can see that Adrian Barclay, nobody famous in particular. They just didn't really care about getting the Green MP's name right. It's good, isn't it? It's good. It's good, isn't it? Just not taking the Green Party seriously at all. Just completely disrespecting them and disregarding their perspective. It's good, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, this is the situation. Obviously, they've produced a report that tells the British government that it actually can't exist without depending on other countries, and that we live in the world, and the British government had it shut down and refused to publish the report. just about one of the most British things that could possibly happen. Just incredibly reflective of the like the British ruling class as a whole, really. Yeah, kind of incredible stuff. All right, what does everyone think? You got thoughts to share about the Groniad? If so, let me know now. I'm gonna try and blow my nose for a sec, so I will be muted. Okay, right. Looks like no particular thoughts on this one. Everyone's just a bit horrified. I mean, it is like a bit extremely grim, isn't it? Like, refusing to publish the report so that they can't scrutinize your government and can't tell you that you're doing anything wrong about it is like pretty fucking crazy. I am very skeptical of what's going on with Burnham, because Burnham is approving more drilling in the North Sea, probably, and yeah, I just don't see how we can realistically trust a government that's acting that way. Can't it be published another way? I mean, if they continue to refuse to publish it, especially with public calls to publish it, it's quite likely it would get leaked. It's incredible how the establishment is paralyzed without information from the right channels. And then when it comes from there, they just stick their fingers in their ears, and it works. I mean, it doesn't really work though, does it? Like, this is my point about about what I've been saying in what I was saying in The World Is Not Ending, and what I was saying about that, like, where you can't just ignore the collapse of the climate and keep on turning a profit. There is no profit to extract without nature. Like, nature is actually the source of all profit. Literally the every bit of energy on the planet comes from the sun, right? And and most of that is via photosynthesis, right? Like, we can't have any profit whatsoever without nature existing in some form. Just gotta send something to someone on Instagram. One thing I wanted to do on this stream today, before all the technical bullshit happened, was just show you a bit of my Instagram feed, because I've been feeling genuinely quite troubled recently by how just how much slop there is. I feel like there's been a noticeable increase in slop fairly recently. I couldn't really put a definite time on it. I'm not sure I'm going to do this right now, because I want to press on to the other articles and then get towards wrapping up and go have some dinner. But yeah, it's just this really noticeable. Maybe I could do this quickly, actually. Let me just go on here quickly. Is there anything on here that would dox any of my friends or anything? No, I think we're okay. Yeah, I think we're okay. Yeah, okay. All right. So here's some of my feed, right? Now, okay, this is someone I follow. That's someone I follow. And then, like, it gets into Slop pretty fast. Someone I follow, back to Slop. I follow The Onion, right? That's fine. I follow Al Jazeera. Um, Here, right? Like, not a kind of content I have historically ever really watched. And I feel like this is the kind of thing, and it's hard for me to explain this when, like, I haven't, obviously, like, chat, I haven't, like, shown you, in the past, shown you my, my Instagram feed, so you don't have anything to compare against, but I'm just saying, this is the kind of thing that I just, like, have never, like, interacted with, barely ever seen previously. That's an account I follow. Red Bull, is this one promoted? No, suggested for me. Yeah, I don't know why. I have no fucking clue why. Onion, I follow The Onion. This is another, yeah, just like Slop. I absolutely don't like regularly interact with this kind of content. A lot of it has been superhero shit though, which is like really a little bit, yeah, just like Million Peaches says mine's the same, just loads and loads of Slop. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's really bizarre. Like, it's just, I feel like it's happened relatively recently, and it is quite noticeable, I think, that there's less political stuff. Like, there's quite a sharp divide. Okay, so here, for example, right, I've said plenty that I live in Southwark, so this should be no news to anyone. Lewisham is a nearby borough of London to me, right? And I follow Lewisham People's Assembly. And noticeably for me here, right, one of the things that I am getting in my feed here that's very explicitly political and quite radical in its politics is one of the people I follow, and then immediately back to Spider-Man Slop, right? Someone I follow. This shit's been driving me insane. This shit's been driving me completely insane. Just clips from movies. They're just showing clips from movies. How it's made Slop. I don't follow this person. I'm not going to call their art Slop, but I don't follow them. More Spider-Man Slop. House of Decline. Memes are... You see what I mean? Like, it genuinely... I really think it wasn't like this pretty recently. I don't know, like, I think it's a known thing for a while that, like, Meta is trying to like, hide politics as much as possible and make its like services all just a distraction away from any kind of radical politics, like obviously that suits their class interests and business interests, but I'd say sometime in the last like month or so there was a really noticeable shift to when just like complete idiot baby hog nonsense, just complete slop, like next tier slop. It's the slop of slop. Just started showing up on my feed, and I was just like, what the fuck is this? Anyway, let's get back to the lib slop, I guess. We need a meme October revolution to get rid of the meme czars. Yeah. Okay, I mean, that's another one, actually. Speaking of the memes, right? Like, even, like, meme content that is not particularly political that I like and interact with has kind of been, like, purged. It feels like I'm quite into, I guess, like, absurdist, well-edited, surrealist, Zoomer humor nonsense. Right, is the kind of stuff I like. Important Videos playlist. Anyone who knows Important Videos playlist, that is like seminal to me, and that is exactly the kind of like short video content on Instagram that I absolutely love. And I'm getting so much shit now that like, so much shit that's pro-cop. I'm getting so much shit that is like incel mindset, misogynist content. Like, I keep on getting suggested videos where like a woman is in some way punished or humiliated for turning down a man's like creepy advances. It's just really like quite dark. Anyway, let's get back to Europe's Age of Fire. Is it finally time to panic? So this one, even from just from the byline, is immediately like doing some awful slop, right? Is it time to panic? Well, Paul Taylor, I'm assuming that you have been organizing as a climate organizer and eco-socialist revolutionary for the last 30 years, and now you've reached a point of despair, which is why you're asking, is it finally time to panic? Presumably, right? That's what we're all feeling, right? Is that we've all been trying, we've actually all done things and tried to change things, and so the point at which we panic is when, like, we've actually tried things, right? We certainly, Paul Taylor here couldn't possibly be asking, is it time to panic after doing nothing? Surely. Surely he's not asking, I've tried nothing, can I now indulge myself even further and just have a little hissy fit like a fucking toddler? Surely Paul Taylor is not saying, is it time to just stomp my little feeties and ball up my hands into fists and cry, having tried nothing? Surely. When I first lived in France in the 1970s, heat waves were an exception. I was doing research on the French Revolution in the National Archives in Paris in June 1967 during one of the 3 heat waves in the 20th century, when scorching heat forced archivists to stop issuing historical correspondence because our sweat was damaging the documents. Today, such extreme weather events are almost an annual occurrence, with the heat starting ever earlier in the year. In July 2022, the nearby Montagnette Hills burned for nearly a week in a fire started accidentally by sparks from a passing train and fanned by the mistral wind that whistles down the Rhône Valley. The hills are still blackened and bare 4 years later. Such wildfires have become frequent. We hear the low growl of Canadair water bomber planes over the Alpes, of the Alpi? How would you say this? Hills, and fire engine sirens, and watch anxiously from the rooftop for smoke. Laurent Manson, a 38-year-old volunteer fireman from our neighboring village, Saint-Étienne-du-Grès, died on fire prevention duty this week. Friends who lovingly planted a vineyard in the Var hinterland were evacuated from their home near Cotignac as the firestorm approached. Taking only an overnight bag, their dog, and their car, they sheltered in a nearby village, only to be told to move again as the wildfire spread. They returned home to find their house standing, but the olive grove devastated. The gardens scarred by the flames, the vines scorched and desiccated, and the forest behind the house burned to the ground. No grape harvest this year. Neighbors were less fortunate and lost everything. Climate change patterns are starting to affect the attractiveness of Provence as a destination for tourism and second homes, while making life harder for farmers and wine growers. The government extended the summer sales for a week to try to entice consumers to shop, but the shopkeepers complain that few venture out in this heat. A British couple we know have just sold their house in Saint-Remy and bought a place in rainy Brittany where it's cooler. The green and temperate Dordogne looks ever more enticing. It's no longer a struggle to convince my French wife to holiday in Northumberland in July. This year, severe fires have moved further north, ravaging the forest of Fontainebleau, near Paris, immortalized by the 19th century Barbizon school of painters and impressionists such as Monet, Renoir, and Cézanne. Canadaires had to scoop up water from the Seine to douse the blazes. Another monster wildfire has driven holidaymakers and residents from Cap Ferret on the scenic southwestern bay of Arcachon and burned all the way to the outskirts of Bordeaux, forcing the evacuation of 220,000 people to makeshift dormitories in community centres, sports halls, and fairgrounds. Air pollution from smoke particles threatens the health of residents over a wide area. Some 13,000 businesses, including aircraft and armament factories, have been temporarily shut, and the toll on the economy is mounting. On a drive through the French Basque country at the weekend, the A63 motorway to Bordeaux was closed for 170 kilometers south of the city because of wildfires for emergency vehicle traffic. Officials broadcast appeals to tourists to change their holiday plans and avoid the region. Like everything in France, the heatwave quickly turned political. Candidates campaigning for the next year's presidential election have lambasted the government for everything, from failing to buy more Canadair planes, they are ordered but there is a 3 to 5 year wait, to failing to install air conditioning in public buildings. It is absurd to let people die of heat, the hard-right National Rally leader Marine Le Pen said. She has promised a massive plan for air conditioning, starting with hospitals, schools and care homes, with interest-free loans to households and local authorities to install cooling. Marine Tondelier, the leader of the French Green coalition Les Ecologistes, has accused the government of blaming forest fires on arsonists rather than adapting the country to climate change by cutting carbon dioxide emissions faster and insulating buildings better. Yet, in a country where people expect a lot of the state, families who have lost everything sound surprisingly resilient and overwhelmingly grateful to the firefighters and emergency services. We'll just have to start all over again, said a middle-aged woman interviewed on France Info Radio, surveying the smouldering ruins of her home near Cap Ferret. The sense that climate change is rapidly gathering pace is stark in southern France, prompting some well-heeled residents to plot their escape, while others struggle to adapt their homes and lifestyles to ever more intense heat. Perhaps the starkest illustration of the pace is in the Côte d'Ivoire wine sector. Perhaps the starkest illustration of the pace of climate change is the wine sector. Grape harvesting now officially starts 2 weeks earlier than in the 1980s. The average alcohol content of the wine has increased by up to 1 percentage point per decade, from 11% in the 1980s to more than 14% on average today. The wrath of God, man's climate sins, can be tasted in the grapes of Provence. I'm going to be just fine. I'm going to be just fine. Oh my goodness. Chat, what do you think of that article? Do you think it was good? If you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. I read this and you have to suffer anyway. It's hardly fucking Nostalgia Critic, is it? Fucking hell. Just fucking hell, really. Just fucking hell. Give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts. It's interesting, right? Because, like, it's so masturbatory. Ultimately, I think it's expressing the feelings that we want people to be expressing about climate change. This is bad and we need to react to it more. But also, like, ew. Like, it's really bad. Like, what the fuck? Jad the Mad, welcome to the stream. Nice to have you here. Someone tip this woman for reading that. Thank you, Oki dear. Yes, someone tip me. We are at 118.11 in donos so far, which means that if we wanted to hit the goal today of 150, everyone would only have to give £1 each. So if, you know what, I'm even going to do the extra effort of typing in !TIP for you. There you go. There you go. Now everyone just go there. Oh, it's even less now. Little Toasty X, thank you so much for the £5.34 donation with the message, fun numbers. That's a really good number, thank you. That's one of my favorite. Consecutive numbers is one of my favorite bits. I love watching for them on the clock. We got 123.5. Sorry, 123 point. It shouldn't be that hard to remember. I literally just said it's consecutive. 123.45 now, and we're aiming for 150. So if everyone watching gave even less than £1 now, we would get to the donation goal immediately. Obviously, we don't have to stop there. If everyone wanted to give £2 right now, actually, let me think about it like this. If everyone watching right now gave £2.50, yeah, if everyone watching right now gave £2.50, we would get to £200, and that would be a very, very, very good stream for me, big success, and I would probably spend it on the tattoo that I have booked in in a few days. I got to be honest with you, that is my next big expenditure. But I'll also be spending it on bills and food and essentials. I think it's important that I'm upfront that I also like enjoy my life, right, and that it's not I'm not living like on dry beans. Or whatever. Like, I just want people to know, like, I guess I want people to have an appropriate sense of, like, I'm quite poor, and, like, I do need money, and I only get paid when strangers on the internet decide to pay me. And so please do, because I'm in a strange continuum between, if nobody does it, I will not be able to eat. I will not be able to pay rent. And when people do it, I do get myself nice things too, and I don't want to pretend that I don't. Okie Dear says, joy is load bearing. I think that's true. I do think that's true. That's another part of it as well. Like, I don't think it's productive for our politics either, for me to pretend like, only the absolute bare necessities are the only thing that's like, whatever. Please tip me, and I believe we can get past the tip goal pretty trivially. We have one pretty long article in the New Statesman next. I'm going to take a little break. Like, I'm going to chill, have some Pepsi, and catch my breath before we go into the next article, because the next one's relatively long. It's Richard Seymour. If people remember Richard Seymour from previous Liberal Slop streams, this motherfucker loves declaring the start of a new age. I think this guy might have named like 3 different kinds of realism, of which we are entering a new era in the time that we've been doing the Liberal Slop stream. Looking up his writer profile, I found that he has actually written for Jacobin before, so he's at least nominally fairly left-wing. But, like, the New Statesman is just such a grim, barren wasteland. It sucks. Jad the Mad, thank you so much for the £2.50, the suggested donation amount. With the message, get your dry beans. It's good. Thank you so much. Yes, everyone, the minimum donation amount is £2.50, because if everybody did it, we would, as I said, go to £200. But I know also a lot of people have already donated, so okay. Dry beans hype. Jacobin's been going downhill for a while now. I think I agree, but I think it's also been quite a while, like a long time. I think that people tend to have a reaction to reading, like, when you've been relatively recently radicalized, you read something that's like a long-standing socialist publication, you're like, oh my god, they're saying it. They're saying Karl Marx is right about stuff. And I think that Jacobin's actually been a bit shit for more than a minute. That's just I'm assuming you could all hear that, because in this room, that was the loudest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm so sick of insecure men getting loud engines it's just like, oh, my sensitive little ears. Lorcan says, oh shit, Soph, did you see Kathleen Stock has declared young women using walking sticks are suffering from social contagion? So I will point out here, and I'm not usually that quick to point this out, transmascuration is going on here. I'm just joking about it. I'm not that quick to point it out. It's whatever. But I do think that is the thing that's going on there. Kathleen Stock is describing trans masks as the population that she's been studying. Like, she's not actually talking about young women. And there is a... Million Peaches, thank you so much for the £5.67 donation. Exclusively dry bean money. I see. Well, you better not take any steps to wet my beans then. That's you warned. Bruh, sticks are gender free. Okay. Hold up, please. Okay. Let's all slow down a little bit. Kathleen Stock is a famous TERF who has been publishing TERF articles for a long time. The population she pays the most attention to is trans people. When she says young women, she is talking about trans masks. She is definitely talking about non-binary and masculine AFAB trans people. And yes, physical disabilities are disproportionately represented in the trans community because some physical disabilities are traumagenic, and being trans in a cis-sexist society is traumatic. So people get all sorts of disabilities, and so there are more trans masks with walking sticks than there are proportionally than there are in the rest of the population assigned female at birth. And that's what Kathleen Stock is pointing at, and she's trying to describe social contagion because she's really determined to prove that social contagion is a real thing. She sees statistical trends and she says these people must be copying one another. Here's another thing I don't talk all that much about on stream, right? But my experiences with dissociation, right? I've suffered a lot of trauma in my life. It's not that much of a surprise that I experience dissociation. Sometimes I'm kind of different people, and that's one of the most ridiculed and ignored and claimed to be fake mental health diagnoses on the planet that people just go out of hand, just like, no, that's not real. And it's one where people claim an enormous social contagion, because when people hear about it, they suddenly start claiming they've got it, almost like they learned language to describe experiences they were having. And it's such a bizarre thing for me as someone who experiences like quite extreme dissociation across a variety of different types and settings and experiences over time. That I see people describing stuff and it's like, I'm seeing them use language that I, as someone who has learned a lot about mental health and therefore am more comfortable, identifying things in myself, I've used language privately in my private life to people that I then see people who are talking about it in a public setting using to describe their experiences word for word the same. Such as, what does it feel like to shift from one personality to another? It's like waking up, right? This is a thing that I have been saying to sorry, okay, Sharara, thank you so much for the £4.81 donation with the message exclusively wet bean money. Well, you better not do anything to dry my beans then. Um, yeah, people give each other language to describe experiences. It's an epistemic issue, you know, and that combined with statistical trends, such as, for example, women who are traumatized quite a lot tend to dissociate. Shockingly, um, turns into a pattern that someone engaging, frankly, in just heinous bad faith claims to be a social contagion. Like, people just need to be isolated from each other so they don't catch the social mental disease of whatever. And it's just like, no, that's not true with dissociative disorders. It's not true with being trans. It's not true with walking with a walking stick. People, yes, there are plenty of people, trans people, who've got like a physical disability. They've got chronic fatigue or joint issues or whatever, and physical activity could help them to be in a physically better situation. But simply saying, well, they should just exercise more, and then shrugging and moving on like it's a them problem, right, doesn't address the systemic issue that people get excluded by their transness from society because of people like Kathleen Stock. It's just like, yes, Lorcan, I did see that, and there you go. You've now had my thoughts on it. Vordrella says, I often feel like people who dismiss this stuff do so because they associate weakness with trauma they've had that they're denying because only weak people have traumas, not me. Yeah. 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 Sometimes, I mean, in personal experience, I've seen some people are extremely, like, dismissive because they're afraid of admitting trauma they've experienced. Some people are dismissive because they haven't experienced that stuff, and the stuff that they have personally experienced has led them to believe that they're the sort of expert on all the ways that someone can suffer. I've seen a lot of people express deeply callous attitudes towards people who have a kind of suffering that they just haven't experienced. I'll say this, like, this is something I've experienced plenty, right? So I mentioned earlier in the stream, my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer when I was less than a year old. He died very slowly over 25 years. He died when I was 26. That was an awful experience, and it really, like, blew my family to bits. And it's just been so traumatic. And one of the most traumatic parts of it is how alienating it is, because other people have not been through this, right? Like, if you go and speak at, like, a support group or whatever to other people who've had, like, lost a family member to a neurodegenerative illness or brain cancer, they've often died in, like, a year, 2 years, 5 years tops. 25 years is an insanely long time to, like, move through this awful thing happening in your family. And I have experienced in my life a ton of people who are really dismissive of the ways in which I've been impacted negatively by this. And when I say dismissive, they just treat me like I just don't have anything wrong, or I'm in some sense, like, just pretending to be traumatized by a very obviously traumatic experience. And that's because they can't relate to it, because it doesn't fit into a common pattern of trauma for them, and because the results of it don't map onto their understanding, right? So I think it goes both ways. I don't think it's just like they've experienced the thing so they're dismissive of it, but I think that's true as well. Like, to give more strength to your point, like, I used to know someone who said that who experiences psychosis, and would be very upfront with people that she experiences psychosis, and then when I was talking about experiencing psychosis, having like hurt people, having acted in scary ways to people. She was just like, you can't blame that on psychosis. And it's like, so it's just not in your experience, that thing, and you're talking like you're the expert on being psychotic because you experience psychotic in a like experience psychosis in a way that's what I guess you just have a bit of a scary time and you get taken care of. Well, ultimately you have to confront that has to do with enormous privilege, right? Like you must see that that's a situation where you're getting what you need and other people are not. Like I talk about this plenty publicly. I volunteer at a harm reduction hub. It's like a combination. Sorry, I'm gonna wait for this insecure man in his insecure man car to be further away because he really needs everybody to know about his car. Okay, so I volunteer at a harm reduction hub. It's a combination needle exchange community center, advice center for homeless people, drug users, sex workers, people with precarious immigration statuses, mentally ill people, and like helping out people who are like street homeless drug users experiencing extreme mental illness and in some cases psychosis. Yeah, bro. Their behavior is sometimes really scary and harmful to people. That's actually a common feature of people being psychotic. It's kind of why people started using the term psychotic to describe threatening behavior that they can't understand very well. And that doesn't mean that all people who experience psychosis are evil in their soul. Or even that all people who experience psychosis, when they're experiencing psychosis, should be treated like they're a scary person. Actually doing that would be extremely unkind and would make a lot of people who are experiencing psychosis way worse if they can tell that you're acting suspicious of them, right? But being out of touch with reality can make people act in scary and harmful ways. Vaudrella says we can learn from one another as opposed to arguing that our experience with a particular thing is the only experience. It would be nice if people would do that more, yes. Right, let's read this. What's he called? Richard Seymour? Richard Seymour. Let's read this Richard Seymour article in the New Statesman. And what time are we at now? 20 to 10. Okay. Let's read Welcome to the Pyrocene. This summer has proved that some people would rather watch things burn than inconvenience capitalism. Richard Seymour has been quite frustrating in previous articles that we've read. This is a fairly promising subheader. In Somos, in southern France near Bordeaux, a wildfire erupted on 22nd of July and within 2 days had generated the country's first ever pyrocumulonimbus. This is so annoying. I'm literally writing this point in a thing I'm writing right now, and it's going to look like I copied this guy. Fuck's sake. A thundercloud formed by smoke and ash. In ferocious heat generated by the blaze, a smoky, sooty, convective column punched into the upper troposphere and condensed into a thundercloud, generating downdrafts, erratic high winds, and dry lightning that struck the dried-out biomass on the ground, creating more fires. This is typical of the logic of climate change. The fossil-fueled industrial activities of capitalism convert the biophysical feedback loops of the Earth system into destructive spirals. Last year's European wildfires were the worst on record, and in recent years European fires were 273% above the 2006 to 2021 norm. This year, in France and Spain, the area burned is breaking records. Across Europe, 250,000 hectares of land have burned so far, an area equivalent to Luxembourg, with more than 300,000 people displaced. While skeptics claim the continent is having its quietest year of wildfires, records show that in terms of area burned, it is one of the worst years. The fire frontier is moving north as new pyro regions arise in Germany, Romania, and even the UK. In the fire wave blighting the UK this summer, even the Cairngorms in Scotland, historically not a zone of uncontrollable fires, burned with alacrity. Meanwhile, in Suffolk, those reform-led council Meanwhile, Meanwhile, in Suffolk, whose reform-led council opposes net zero and recently voted to rescind the climate emergency declaration, a major incident was declared as wildfires burned just miles from the Sizewell B nuclear plant. The planet is made to burn, with plenty of organic fuel, flammable carbon-based organisms, heat and lightning to produce recurring wildfires, to which ecosystems have adapted. Each ecological system has its own native fire regime, some of which, like the taiga forests circling the Arctic, have been burning regularly since the Ice Age. Whole ecological niches have become adapted to fire, and some organisms even seem to have evolved to burn. Certain Banksia and eucalyptus species of a tree, for example, exhibit certain Banksia and eucalyptus species of tree, for example, exhibit serotiny, where seeds are retained inside a cone or fruit and only released during a wildfire. This is why fire suppression efforts are often counterproductive. For example, while the grasslands, shrublands, and chaparral and woodland habitats of California burn more intensely, sorry everyone, I think one of my neighbors is pulled up like right outside the window, and it's too hot to really have my windows closed at the moment. I think they've carried on away now? Okay. I know of grease lightning. What is dry lightning? Without rain? Lightning in a dry condition. Lightning without an accompanying rainstorm is what they mean by that. Cool neighbors, though? I mean, all my neighbors are cool. I like all my neighbors. It's not against them personally. Like, it's literally just that I'm not gonna go and give all my neighbors my stream schedule or my like recording time. I had one neighbor so far was like washing his car with like a pressure washer that made a very loud, high-pitched noise, and I think I was trying to do. It wasn't even a job thing, actually. It was a Zoom call for stuff to do with the estate, so I felt a lot more like okay telling him that I needed him to pause it. I was like, I need to get on this Zoom call for a housing campaign thing in the next 15 minutes, so could you just like stop and come back in half an hour, please? And he was very understanding. Okay, where were we? For example, while the grasslands, shrublands, and chaparral and woodland habitats of California burn more intensely and dangerously because of climate change, efforts to prevent fires rather than manage them tend to leave fuel to accumulate while also changing the biochemical composition and moisture retention of the soil, thus making the fires more extreme. Australia, likewise, has evolved to burn since it broke off from ancient Gondwana, with ecosystems packed with pyrophytic and pyrophilic trees and plants across large, low-nutrient, parched landscapes. About 5% of its land surface is burned by wildfires each year, destroying 1/10 of the country's net primary productivity. The ability of tropical forests, woodlands and savanna to photosynthesize solar energy. This is becoming more dangerous because of climate change, but if the trees ceased to burn entirely, parts of the continent would die. However, the global heating caused by fossil emissions is making wildfires unmanageably more severe. This is in part because hotter air carries more water, resulting in wetter winters followed by scorching dry summers. In this weather whiplash, winter rainfall stimulates abundant growth of plants and trees, which are then dried out in the parching summer as the hot air sucks more moisture from the soil and vegetation, leaving plenty of dry fuel for wildfires. The result is that the fire-adapted regions experience a drastic increase in the severity and extent of wildfires, outpacing the capacity of local biota to adapt. The sensitivity to warming is nonlinear. For example, in California, a 1 degree C increase in summer temperatures yields an increase of 22 to 25% in area burned. And even a global temperature just above 1.5 degrees C above pre-industrial levels makes extreme forest fires 88 to 152% more likely. The result is devastating for fire-adapted ecosystems, because the life trajectory of a local organism has been tuned over evolutionary time to a stable wildfire interval and intensity. Heating-induced interval squeeze reduces the seeding and growth of plants in subsequent years. This is also likely to make the landscape more susceptible. Among the cascading effects of the spread of wildfire events, there is not only a further contribution to the emissions that will prime the land to burn more, but also the growth of what Mike Davis called pyromaniacal weeds in scorched drought land. For example, heating and wildfire catalyzes the spread of cheatgrass in the United States. Cheatgrass. Where's my search? Cheatgrass. Huh. Which reduces biodiversity, adds fine fuels to the ecosystem, and increases horizontal fire continuity, increasing the speed and coverage of the blaze. In the Mediterranean, there is a similar positive feedback loop between the spread of tussock grass and increasing susceptibility to wildfires. This is compounded by the growth of invasive wood pyrophytes, which have evolved to burn. This weather whiplash effect has been extremely visible in the United Kingdom over the past 6 months, culminating in half the country being officially in severe drought in July. Pardon me. The UK, while it has always had tens of thousands of small grassland fires each year, has not historically had a wildfire problem in the way that France, Spain, and Greece have. The fires that have burned annually have been manageable and probably necessary. For example, wildfires help the heather and gorse that grow in Dartford to propagate by clearing brush and cracking open the hard shells of seeds. This prevents the area from becoming scrubland and maintains a habitat for birds and insects. Yeah, because it creates naturally occurring popcorn. Did people know before this stream naturally occurring popcorn existed? This prevents the area from becoming scrubland and maintains a habitat for birds and insects. Right. The incidence of major wildfire events being inversely proportional to average mean rainfall used to coincide with drought years, such as in 1995 and 2003. However, the large number of wildfires in the UK has risen steadily over the past decade, and the driver, warmer air producing wetter winters and hot, dry summers creating abundant dry grassland that ignites easily during heat waves, is the same as on the continent. By 2018, the UK already had 2 to 3 times more heatwave activity than in the pre-industrial era. Summer rainfall is expected to fall a further 15% by 2050 and 22% by the 2080s. The UK is already experiencing some fires resembling those in Mediterranean climates, and as the fire frontier moves north, that will become more common. Someone, thank you so much for the £9.25 donation, which takes us up to £145.67. We only need £4.33 £4.33 to tip us over the goal. I will say again, if everybody watching right now gave £2.50, we would shoot past £200 in this stream, which would be very exciting. But if we only want to, just get past the goal, we are only £4.33 away. Explaining these dangerous trends, the environmental historian Stephen Pine coined the concept of the pyrocene. He argues that the human race has lived through 3 fires: wildlife ignition from nature, controlled burning of landscapes by early humans to clear land and cook, and the industrial burning of fossil fuels. This last episode, which has been the energetic basis of capitalist civilization since the 19th century, and remains essential to most of what is produced and consumed, is what is hastening a dangerous planetary rupture, the Pyrocene Age. However, climate change is not the only anthropogenic factor in this. Across Europe, land has been abandoned and depopulated under the pressure of agricultural consolidation, creating large, unbroken expanses of forest and scrubland that allow fires to spread unchecked. In the depopulated interior, Sorry, I lost my place there because I was reading chat. In the depopulated interior, scrubs and plants that would have been cleared accumulate as fuel for fire. This process has been accelerated under the EU's Common Agricultural Policy, in which subsidies are based on the total area of land farmed, thus rewarding larger farm owners. The problem is only made worse by the fact that the EU's main response to wildfires is an ineffectual policy of suppression which, far from stopping fires, leads to ongoing fuel accumulation and landscape-level fuel continuity that results in mega-fires. At the same time, European real estate developers build closer to the fire belt, putting more people at risk. Perhaps the worst example of this was the unlicensed construction of homes in Mati, Greece, which then suffered a lethal wildfire in 2018 that killed 91 people. Forest monocultures driven by the demand for timber are also much more susceptible to wildfires, as they provide a continuous fuel load with tightly packed, evenly spaced, and more flammable trees such as conifers. This is exactly the case with the massive Landes de Gascogne forests burning in southern France. It is a dense monocultural pine forest planted for harvest roughly every 40 years. The EU has made belated and underwhelming efforts to address some of these factors, but in practice, emergency response monopolizes most of the attention and funds. These wildfires are not natural disasters. At every step, they are the predictable result of decisions usually made for profit. In fact, there is no such thing as a purely natural disaster. As the disaster expert Ben Wisner and his colleagues have been documenting for years, all disasters, earthquakes, floods, storms, wildfires, are made disastrous by man-made vulnerabilities. As Mike Davis pointed out in his essay, The Case for Letting Malibu Burn, the rich are protected even when they choose to live in wildfire zones. Meanwhile, the poor and elderly tend to live in areas exposed to wildfire and have the least resources to cope and rebuild. They also tend to be the most susceptible to the disruptions to healthcare during a disaster and the poor air quality as smoke pours out of the wildfire. It is because these runaway fires are in no way natural that the ideological response of the right is constant denial and displacement. The universal tendency is to blame arsonists, much as the right reacts to extreme heat waves by deflecting the conversation onto air conditioning. In France, even the inept centrist Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, leaned into this idiocy, highlighting the number of arrests for deliberately starting fires. It would be remarkable if the number and distribution of arsonists just happened to closely track global warming, declining summer rainfall, and more frequent heat waves. But even if that were true, the forests and scrubland wouldn't burn quite so swiftly or promiscuously, what are you on about, if they hadn't been primed to ignite. It is traditional now that as each summer brings us lethal wildfires and mass displacements, the term apocalyptic starts appearing in headlines. We should be wary, as the theologian Thomas Merton once warned, of confusing our own catastrophic forebodings with the apocalypse. Apart from anything else, we tend to acclimatize to apocalypse in that sense. The catastrophes show up on our feeds, generate panic and gloom, and amid general political paralysis worsened by the repression and retreat of the climate movement since 2019, are assimilated to a new normal. The threshold for apocalypse just keeps moving. There is also a danger in being enthralled by the most visually appalling disasters. Walter Benjamin once warned that humanity's self-alienation was so complete that it could experience its own destruction as an aesthetic pleasure of the first order. But for that we need a spectacle. Wildfires are the spectacular moments in longer and more lethal heat waves. For example, the heat wave in the last week of June produced an estimated 20,000 deaths across Europe. These deaths, usually resulting from cardiovascular stress among the elderly, are not sudden and spectacular, but happen quite quietly and anonymously in overstretched hospitals over several days or longer. Unlike the flames, they cannot be turned into an image for front pages or feeds for our collective titillation. In its literal sense, however, an apocalypse is a revelation. Perhaps that's just what it is. For decades now, the denialist right in Britain has argued that warming is to be welcomed. Relax and enjoy the sunshine, as Dominic Raab told Britons during 2022's record heatwaves. It's mostly beneficial, the journalist and conservative peer Matt Ridley argued in the same year. In fact, there has long been a fantasy that heat might even make this rainy country a more convivial place, hospitable to vineyards. We could live the Mediterranean life in the suburbs of Kent. The former Tory Chancellor Nigel Lawson evoked this image when he claimed in An Appeal to Reason 2008 that climate change was less severe than in Roman and medieval periods. When there is eventually some kind of fucking truth and reconciliation process around climate change, motherfuckers like that need to catch a sentence. I'm really deadly serious. If you wrote a book smugly claiming climate change isn't real, or it's not as bad as it was in a previous thing, or any of this shit, you like gulag. I'm deadly serious about this. Apart from the fact that southern England has already has plenty of vineyards, what we are seeing in the Mediterranean today, and we will see in Britain as the fire frontier moves north, isn't refined, but bucolic splendor, but 100-meter flames ripping through the countryside. Perhaps that is why the argument now takes a fatalist turn. In the Daily Telegraph, Alistair Heath argues that we can't do anything about climate change and efforts to mitigate emissions impede growth, so we may as well stop trying and learn to cope with, and whenever possible, even enjoy, a Mediterranean life. Some people would rather watch things burn than inconvenience capitalism. But what do we see? What do we really see if we look closely at the flames, belching smoke and spiraling, cascading ecological symptoms? Look at the wildfire that produces its own catalysts, despoiling the earth and atmosphere, dissolving all boundaries and indifferently consuming all substrates until they are exhausted. It could almost be a monstrous personification of an impersonal system that chews up nature in a spectral metabolism and belches out a yield shareholder value which is as evanescent as flame and smoke. It is almost as though capitalism has, through its own ceaseless, ravenous activity, trained ecosystems to behave just like it. For the denialists, of course, that is a revelation too far. That's the article. What did you think, everyone? Let me know. I think this one was quite good. I feel like this one I would go as far as to promote it out of the category of slop. I think actually Richard Seymour is returning to leftist roots on this one. I mean, I haven't been keeping up with him closely, but I think it was overall pretty good. I feel like this is the kind of thing I'd like to see more of, to some degree. I think we need some focus on pragmatic solutions, and not just at the governmental level. We need some advice for people, like just directly what they can do. We need organizing strategies, we need governmental strategies, we need international strategies. I think that we need to discuss a lot of the particulars of how we can respond to this stuff at every level, because that's the nature of this crisis. Morgan says something interesting here. So, I'm sorry, but there's no way any normal person takes you seriously as a commentator if you are still doing climate denialism. I think that is the number one thing I'm feeling about the relationship between mainstream politics and climate in the last couple of weeks. 20,000 dead across Europe, more than 3,000 dead in the UK. And I just as I said, there's going to be a huge amount of elderly people. There's going to be a huge amount of boomers who are deeply affected by climate change. If they themselves may be experiencing health problems, they might know people who've died, who will have been being propagandized by reform, and there's now a car alarm. This is why I usually have my windows closed when I'm streaming, and the summer is killing me. But yeah, no, I think that is it. You can't really get away with just denying climate change in the same way anymore. And I think these, like, the flippant comments that Richard Seymour is highlighting here, where people say we'll just enjoy like a Mediterranean climate. Nah, man. Like, we can also see that, like, what's happening here, like, we're not enjoying a Mediterranean climate, like, by any stretch of the imagination. What was the most recent one he was referring to there? In the Telegraph, Alistair Heath argues we can't do anything about it. Was that recently, do we think? Guru Magazine, Alistair Heath, a powerful British journalist shaping fuck all this right off. Fuck all this absolutely right off. Fuck that. Alistair Heath went on the podcast Trigonometry. Yeah, I don't need to know anything more about this guy. This is pathetic. Like, deeply pathetic. Like, nah, fuck all that. Okay, alright. Artist Synth, thank you for hanging out. It's been lovely to have you here. Have a lovely night and sleep well. Sweet dreams, etc. Yeah, I mean, I think that was fairly good writing about climate on the whole. I think we need to take a variety of different approaches. I will say that I think it fit into the broad same set of things people tend to say about climate, which is just like, it's bad, we need to get on with a sort of nebulous, there's a nebulous sort of stuff we need to get on with. And I feel like, again, I just feel like specifying more details is really useful. This is going to be a key part of this thing I'm writing at the moment. I'm going to highlight that Hannah Spencer, the Green MP for Gorton and Denton, has introduced a bill asking for there to be set maximum temperatures for workplaces in the UK, so that if a workplace is hotter than a certain level, people can't be asked to work there. Like, legally cannot be allowed to be working if it gets too hot. And I think that's really important. Like, I think that's a very specifically good policy enforcing like workers' rights around climate, that also, like, that slows down the economy when it's hotter as well, which is the kind of thing that, like, the kind of thing that strengthens the cycle I'm already predicting from the model I've put forth in The World Is Not Ending, right? Like, it will get harder for capitalism to function, right? And we'd rather that during extreme heat that's true, not because the workers are dropping dead of heat exhaustion, but because they're not allowed to work because of labor laws. And I think that's that's a crucial crucial thing. Okay, I've been streaming for about 3 hours now. I'm doing my job right now. It's nice when I get paid for doing my job. So, if you're enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream. You can subscribe or cheer or donate directly using command tip. I'm not that fussy about subscriptions myself, but you do get ad-free viewing, so you get uninterrupted live viewing if you subscribe, and you also get access to Sophie from Mars exclusive Twitch emotes. Copy pasta space gives you a little copy pasta that if you have Sophie from Mars emotes, you can copy in the chat, and it makes a little mural of pictures, some of which are my own astrophotography that I've taken with my own telescope. So I think that's all quite fun, personally. That's a fun thing you can do if you subscribe and if you have Sophie from Mars emotes, because some of the emotes you have are my own pictures I've taken of the planets and the moon with my telescope. But the way that helps me out the most from chatters is when you tip, which you do with command tip, !TIP. We are currently £4.33 away from the donation goal. It is 10 past 10 p.m. here. I'm going to basically keep on talking until someone gets us past this goal. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I have another article I want to get onto, but I'm not going to move on to that either. It's going to be entirely just promo until we get that dono in. You can also go to patreon.com/SophieFromMars, which is my Patreon. As I've said earlier, there are 3 videos coming up onto Patreon in the next couple of weeks. I've actually got a very tight production schedule laid out ahead of me. In the days of early to mid time BreadTube, I was doing like a video a month when I could manage it, and it was quite bad for my mental health and at times bad for my physical health as well. There were literally times when like I would have to delay filming by a couple of days because I got really bad lower back nerve pain, which is like a chronic issue I suffer with, and I had to just like go like, okay, I can't film anything today. I'm gonna have to do that tomorrow instead and just suffer today. So one of the things I've been trying to do as I take my health a lot more seriously, my mental health a lot more seriously, is looking at work stress, because that was definitely something that like really deteriorated my mental health in previous years. And so I'm trying a new thing with my production blocks basically for videos, where I'm doing several projects at a time and then giving myself a lead-in time to work on more projects. And I've reached the point of having 2 essays completely written. One of them I'm finishing over, another one I'm finishing over the weekend, and I'll have 3 essays completely written. I've already filmed almost all of one and recorded the audio, all the voiceover for it, recorded all the voiceover for another one, and then I'll also record the third one. And so my plan is basically like get all the writing done, get all the recording done, then get all the editing done for a set of projects, and then release them as staggered, and that gives me time to do the next block. I'm not expecting to like be able to pull that off so well. Someone, thank you so much for the £5 donation. No message. We have now passed the dono goal, and I will stop pestering you all so much for tips. Thank you so much, someone, our absolute star chatter today, and on other streams as well. So I don't expect that the new production block style will stagger video releases well enough for it to be like monthly releases with no gaps, at least to begin with. If I hit that pace, that will be really good in terms of like the growth of the channel and my sort of long-term, I guess, job security or whatever. But you can expect that through the rest of the year and going into 2027, I will be releasing much more regularly than I have been, because I finally sort of hit a good plan for how I can be releasing videos quite regularly. And yeah, I expect basically to get these next ones out, and then there probably will be a gap of a couple months while I'm finishing off the next block. But I think the more production blocks I do, the better I will get at getting them done faster and also staggering them by appropriate amounts of time. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. And all that to say, because of that new style that I am taking to my production, the best time to become a Sophie from Mars patron is right as I'm finishing a production block of videos, and that time is now. I'm actually aiming to have 3 videos up on Patreon by the end of August, so it's a really, really good time to subscribe to my Patreon. Anyway, yeah, I've now talked long enough that someone did donate. Literally, someone donated. Thank you again so much to our mysterious benefactor, someone. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'll just say, anyone enjoying the stream, please consider paying for the stream by subscribing or cheering, donating directly using command tip, or going to my Patreon. We're going to read one more article, and then I'm going to call it for the night. This one is not climate focused. This one is about Abdul El Sayed, who I haven't actually talked about on the stream, but I felt like was worth bringing up because it seems like kind of a big deal. Chat, do you know about Abdul El Sayed? Have you heard about him? Little Toasty X, thank you so much for the £5 donation with the message "work-life balance for the win." This is good. Thank you. Chat, have you heard of Abdul El Sayed? Morgan says yes. Oki Deer says I'm going libslop mode. Hell yeah. Little Toasty X says have not. Okay, cool. There we go. So, Abdul El Sayed has just won the Democratic primary for Michigan. Michigan is a fairly large, formerly heavily industrialized state, and because of its specifically the automotive industry, America sort of knows Michigan as the place that has Detroit and the collapse of the Detroit was Motor City, and so it became a big Trump base there. Although historically, I believe Michigan and Wisconsin to be kind of purple, kind of swing states. But by making this claim, even if I'm wrong, I'm revealing that I am more of a lanyard and a wonk than I ever want to admit that I am. Avalon, thank you for saying that. Welcome to the stream, by the way. Avalon says he's supposed to be evil and scary because he's Muslim, but that's what the lib slops want me to think about him. Yes, I am. You've entirely called my bullshit. I have nothing surprising to show to you as we go into the final article of the night. Liberals are now fighting a two-front war by everyone's favorite wet boy, Jonathan Chait. It's time to have a Chait. It's a Chait-tastic time. It's Jonathan Chait time. Who's ready for some Jonathan Chait? Okay, the relevant stuff here is Abdul El Sayed is a Muslim, DSA candidate promoted by Mamdani, who has been very, very vocal about opposing Israel and wanting to change the US's position generally on Israel, actually, and has been very open about opposition to Israel. And that's terrifying to the American establishment, obviously. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the main thing, really. I think it's important for anyone who hasn't heard of Abdul El Sayed to understand that compared to Zoran, he has been a lot more openly vocal about opposing Israel, like really a lot more intense about it. All right, let's chait it up. Here we go. When left-wing insurgents defeated a trio of progressive House members in New York, baby, the House Democratic leadership suffered merely an embarrassment. Last night's primary election in Michigan, by comparison, is an outright catastrophe for the party's leaders. I love when they're freaking out. I love when they're having a terrible time, to be honest. Like, to be perfectly honest with you, chat, I love it. It's good. All right. Sorry, I'm just repositioning the chat on the vertical view thing so that I can maybe... Yeah, I think that's a sensible way to do this. Not that I don't really believe anyone's actually watching on the vertical view. Sound off in chat if you're watching on the vertical view and I'll take it more seriously, but I'm just making minor adjustments right now in case anyone is watching on the vertical view. Lorcan says liberals are fighting a one-front war. It's just the front is the left, if you know what I mean. I just realized that I never read the article, Democrats became great by fighting the left. Let me just... Democrats became great by fighting the left. Yeah, I never read that one. How long is it? David Brooks. David Brooks is another classic wet boy. Incredibly wet. It's quite long, unfortunately. Okay. I was going to offer to add this article on Democrats became great by fighting the left if we got another, like, make a new stretch goal for donos but it's actually just, if we just have a look at this, it's actually just quite long. So what I'm going to do is, unless there is a topic that comes up for next week's Liberal Slop stream, sorry, I will be off next week, the week after, for next Liberal Slop stream. If the topic for the next one is too kind of opposed, too different to this for it to work, I will not do it. But if it can fit in, I will do this article as the first one next time. Anyway, when left-wing insurgents defeated a trio of progressive House members in New York, the House Democratic leadership suffered merely an embarrassment. Last night's primary election in Michigan, by comparison, is an outright catastrophe for the party's leaders. The Democratic Senate nominee, Abdul El-Sayed, who defeated the four-term representative, Haley Stevens, has attacked the party as corrupt, offends some of its heretofore cherished principles, and is currently trailing the Republican candidate in a race to hold a Democratic seat that ought to have been safe this year. Parties generally follow bitter primaries with talk of coming together and moving forward. But the centre-left liberals, who have run the Democratic Party for decades, now need to be honest with themselves. They just suffered a crushing blow, and more will come unless they quickly absorb bracing lessons from this debacle. Some of the fixes are obvious. AIPAC has become a poisoned brand among Democratic voters. It's not just AIPAC though. It is Israel. I need you guys to get this. It's not just AIPAC in particular. It's all of Israel, guys. Fending off a leftist insurgency will be all but impossible unless Democrats reject AIPAC's endorsements and stop supporting unconditional aid for Israel that no longer works toward a two-state solution. Democrats also have to stop passively allowing multiple candidates to split the mainstream vote while the leftist vote consolidates behind a single candidate, as occurred in Michigan's 7th District and the Wisconsin governor's race. But the greatest challenge for mainstream liberals is to find a way to engage in and win the substantive argument with the left. This is awesome. Okay, this is going to be a great article. This is inherently difficult. Yeah, because you're wrong. Because you're wrong. This is inherently difficult because within any political party, the extreme faction can appeal to ideological purity without concern for the opinions of voters outside the party. No, you're wrong. Democratic socialism, for instance, is unpopular with the American public as a whole. Not sure about that, buddy. I mean, historically, yes, I'm sure about that. Less and less every day. Democratic socialism, for instance, is unpopular with the American public as a whole, yet it wins the approval of 3/4 of Democrats. You fucking idiot. As a result, Democratic Party moderates who have a good reason to oppose socialism Democratic Party moderates who have good reason to oppose socialism. Oh, money! Right. Money's the reason. Sorry. Have a hard time convincing partisans who show up to vote in primaries to feel the same way. Well, yeah, you can't pay them to vote for you. A similar dynamic has played out in Republican primaries for years on end. Conservatives have lost winnable Senate races because hard-right candidates such as Herschel Walker, Kari Lake, and Todd Akin won their primaries by emphasizing positions that appealed to most of their party's voters but repelled a majority of the electorate. Political consultants use the term wedge issues for positions that separate a candidate's views from those of a majority of voters. But in primaries, the wedge can work the opposite way. It can discredit a broadly popular stance in favor of a narrowly base-pleasing one. El-Sayed does not endorse socialism, but he does support abolishing ICE, providing health insurance for undocumented immigrants who pay taxes, shocking stuff, and making private health insurance redundant and unnecessary. Policy is only part of the disagreement between the factions. Left-wing insurgents have won support less by appealing to ideological disagreements within their party, and more by expressing a broad frustration with its failures. Imagine that, dude. The Democratic Party establishment lost credibility by standing behind a one ineffective president who failed his fundamental goal of burying Trumpism. I'm glad you can see that that is a part of what has happened here, but it's also the genocide. Buddy... Democratic voters, writes the former Barack Obama advisor Dan Pfeiffer, just don't trust Democratic politicians to tell them who can really win. This is a very understandable impulse after 2024 and every Democratic leader backing Biden when he clearly shouldn't have run. What makes the Democratic revolt so perverse, however, is that the party's left provided Joe Biden with his longest lasting and most enthusiastic base of support. What are you talking about? Literally, what are you talking about? The party's left provided Joe Biden with his longest lasting and most enthusiastic base of support? Biden gave progressives a free hand to shape his domestic policies. Elizabeth Warren had more influence than anybody, perhaps even Biden himself, over the administration's personnel. And even after Biden's catastrophic debate performance laid bare his unfitness to run for a second term, Bernie Sanders and AOC stood behind his candidacy. Yes, and that was a huge mistake. It was the Dread Party establishment, including Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, that was trying to push Biden out of the race, while Ocasio-Cortez was attacking the efforts to replace Biden as a putsch by a bunch of rich people. Amazingly, however, the left has turned this history on its head. The establishment now bears the brunt of Biden's failure, whereas the left positions itself as an untried alternative. So he's accusing the left of revisionism on this. I don't know about AOC and Bernie particularly. I do know that every normal person, every voter, every leftist voter was saying, fuck Biden, absolutely not, don't run Biden, are you kidding me? So I really don't think that's like... And the deeper you wade into the left's view of the Democratic Party and its legacy, the more bizarre and counterfactual that belief system becomes. Left-wing activists and intellectuals have settled on a historical account. So when are you going to explain how to debate the left and win, buddy? Because so far you're just kind of like griping about the left. Like you've said, liberals need to have need to engage in and win the substantive argument with the left. And now you're just talking shit on the left, so... I'm not seeing strong arguments so far, unfortunately. Under Jimmy Carter or perhaps Bill Clinton, the theory holds Democrats adopted neoliberalism, a pro-capitalist ideology that only marginally preferable to the Republican platform. Yep, you're describing it perfectly. And stubbornly adhered to it through the Obama era. In fact, the left rallied around Biden precisely because he adopted its theory that the key to restoring the trust of the working class is to reject neoliberalism. I don't remember that. I don't remember Biden saying that, or us saying Biden was good for saying that. At all. That's, a bit fucking crazy to hear. Because I don't remember that being the case in the slightest. El Sayed, for instance, expressed this view to Hassan Piker in response to the left-wing streamer's mockery of the former Clinton advisor James Carville. You think about James Carville, I'm like, bro, you architected the complete right-wing, like, ascent to neoliberalism in '96, he said. Piker, nodding along, replied, this state is a swing state because of the machinations of the Clinton era of politics. These claims don't stand up to casual scrutiny. Even if you hold Carville responsible for everything Clinton did and hold Clinton responsible for everything that happened in Michigan over the past 30 years, the fact is that Clinton made the state more, not less, democratic. This is so frustrating. This is when I talk to people in the UK about Blair, and I'm just so sure I can see it's the same thing with American liberals, right? Like talking to UK liberals about Blair ultimately always comes down to this. He did improve the quality of life. He improved people's living standards. He improved this and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, yep, I reckon probably he did. And those things that he did made it possible for people to live with Thatcherism. Thatcher's changes on their own would have made it so that people couldn't possibly survive, and Blair's changes made it so that they could just about get by. And Clinton did the same shit after Reagan. And I as far as I can tell, it's just beat for beat the same shit. Ahistorical beliefs such as those held by El Sayed and Piker have circulated in part because the left has relentlessly waged factional warfare against the leadership of the party. More like factual warfare, bozo. It's normal for political parties to experience a mix of winning and losing. The Democratic Party only does this when it's scared. The Democratic Party actually only loses a ton of elections when it's doing really well. It's normal for political parties to experience a mix of winning and losing. The left has played down every success by the establishment while forcing it to own every failure, including those for which the left shares responsibility. I think sounds like the left is a really cunning political opponent who has you fucking trounced, my man. This dynamic points to a broader asymmetry between the two factions. The mainstream liberals of the Democratic Party have focused their energies on defeating Republicans. The left-wing faction has focused on defeating them. Oh, this would be such a good companion piece to be reading along with the Democrats became great by fighting the left. El Sayed has suggested that he will beat Mike Rogers, the Republican candidate, by 7 points. Piker, during a rally he held for Francesca Hong, the socialist candidate who's leading in the polls to be Democratic nominee for governor of Wisconsin, repeated his claim that her state and Michigan had become swing states only because of the bungling of the party's establishment. He promised that they would turn permanently Democratic under left-wing leadership. We're going to bring back the working class to both Wisconsin and to Michigan, he declared, without mentioning that El Sayed and the Democratic Socialists of America had performed poorly among voters who lack a college degree. A Republican will never be elected in the state ever again once our movement is done. Carville recently said that he would leave the party rather than share it with the likes of Piker. That is an understandable impulse, given Piker's oft-expressed admiration for terrorist groups and authoritarian regimes. Yes! Do it, Chait. Lower yourself to streamer drama, you fucking idiot. Jesus Christ. Buddy, you are in the Atlantic. You're in the Atlantic right now. You look so weak when you engage in streamer drama. Holy shit. This is so dire. Holy shit. But it is also a prospect that fills Piker and other leftists with glee. Piker appeared along El Sayed on Monday at a pool party for content creators. You got John Fetterman, James Carville fantasizing about leaving the party. I'm like, you're sweetening the deal, Piker gloated. What left-wing insurgents such as El Sayed and Piker want is to take over the Democratic Party, a goal that gets easier when traditional liberals flee it. Carville's wing of the party is being out-strategized by an insurgent faction that has shrewdly exploited the weaknesses of the party's leadership. Hell yeah! Fantastic! The soundest course of action is for mainstream liberals to recognize how and why they have been losing and learn how to fight smarter and harder. Jonathan Chait needs to learn how to write smarter. Harder, I'm not sure. It already seems like it's pretty hard for him. Oh, Christ. Well, thank you for coming along on that journey with me, chat. We are going to raid into somebody next. I'm going to remind you one more. Hello, Penelope Pepper. This seems to be your first chat in this stream. It's been nice to have you here. I didn't realize you were here. I'm going to remind you all one more time that I'm doing work right now. It's nice when I get paid for it. I'm very happy with the donations that I've gotten today, but I will be taking next week off. So, you know, it wouldn't hurt to get more donos, to get more tips, to get more Patreon subscriptions. If you're watching this on the VOD, especially, you can check out the link down below if you're watching the VOD to give me money. Chatters, you can always give me money by subscribing, cheering, donating directly using command TIP, or going to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/SophieFromMars, and supporting me there. Thank you all for coming. It's been lovely to have you here and to chat. And I'll be back in 2 weeks' time, because next week I'm going to go visit lovely Mule up in Manchester. It's been way too long since I've seen Mule, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, we're going to raid into Joan Atoms. Everybody make your favorite animal noises. And go be lovely to Joan and say hi from me, and also say your favorite animal noises from me. Okay. Everybody have a wonderful time. Go meet your neighbors, get organized, get out there, get organizing, and make the world a better place. But for now, enjoy Joan's stream. Good night.